Let's look at the French papers now. Dipty is with us here on set. Really, there's only one story, isn't there, Dipty, that the papers are really full of today?
That's right, and that's the resignation of France's top military officer in what's become a very ugly spat between him and President Emmanuel Macron. Pierre de Villiers angrily quit yesterday over cuts to the military budget this year. The left-leaning paper Libération is extremely critical towards Macron, with a very damning front page here. They call him l'adjudant de la République. L'adjudant is a very low military grade. The idea being that he's this little master or little Macron who's taking on an important big military chief. And as you see on this front page, it's accompanied by a very damning photo as well, that of Macron arriving on the Champs-Élysées during Bastille Day celebrations, ironically in a military vehicle, which itself was a departure for the French president. So these discrepancies we see between Macron's attitude towards the military and the way he sees himself as chief of the military. Le Parisien, meanwhile, speaks of a malaise and uneasiness in the military ranks, one that De Villiers' successor, Général Lecointre, will now inherit.
You found a piece in Le Parisien, haven't you, saying that Macron is actually kind of sowing the seeds here, a real political storm.
And not just a political one, Stuart, but a military storm as well. The paper reminds us that this resignation is a first in modern French history. The last time the military butted heads with a French president was in 1961, when top military officials decided to disobey then-President Charles de Gaulle's orders during the Algerian War, and they were promptly imprisoned for it. Macron will be hard-pressed to find any support in the French papers, either on the left or on the right, as we see in the right-leaning paper Le Figaro today. They are equally as critical, reminding us that there's a unanimity of political opposition to Macron in the wake of the scandal. The paper's editors call it a two-folded error. First of all, they say he shouldn't have cut the military budget at a time when France needs its military. And secondly, they disparage the way that he treated De Villiers, saying that he accused him of lacking dignity.
Now, Libération, as we saw on its front page, extremely critical, just as scathing as well of Macron in today's editorial, aren't they?
That's right. The editors at Libération are wondering if power is starting to go to Macron's head, or even more worrisome, if he's showing himself incapable of taking criticism. The paper says that the first controversies for any French president are often the ones that stick during the 5-year term. This time for Libé, Macron has committed the error. I quote, he's president of the French Republic, and it is time for him to grow up a little. A columnist for Le Figaro says this scandal comes at a time when the Macron style is sort of being brought into question. Something that so seduced voters during the campaign is starting to wear a little thin now as he's president. Macron is starting to irritate people. His authority before was so welcome. Now people are condemning what they see as authoritarianism.
Let's move on to a different story. This is a new development in L'affaire Grégory, as it's known here. The death of a 4-year-old boy back in 1986. It's recently been reopened due to new evidence, hasn't it?
That's right. Actually, his death was in 1984, but he was 4 years old at the time, and it was a cold case, Stuart, that really marked generations of French people. L'affaire Grégory, or the Gregory case, as it's known, captivated people because of the alleged family links behind Gregory's death, apparently motivated by jealousy towards his parents. The case was recently reopened due to new evidence, and last week, in a shocking twist, the judge who presided over the case committed suicide. Now the local paper L'Est Républicain has published a posthumous letter left by the judge in which he explains why things got so dramatic for him. He says he just couldn't take it anymore. Over the years, Judge Lambert actually imprisoned Gregory's own mother and his uncle Bernard Laroche on suspicion of killing the little boy. Laroche was eventually shot dead by little Gregory's father. Now, in his letter, Lambert admits that Laroche was innocent. Gregory's death was Lambert's first case as a judge, and in a way defined his whole career and life up to his death. He also says in his letter that we'll never know the truth behind little Gregory's death.
OK, well, let's end on something in the papers a little bit lighter, a bit of Tour de France news, or rather, it's one photo, actually, that kind of shows the realities of 3 weeks of cycling.
Well, it's one of the greatest sporting competitions, and not least of all because of the toll that cyclists' bodies take during 3 weeks of riding. One Polish rider, Paweł Panjanski, has posted a photo of his legs on Instagram, and
Wow.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Those tanned legs you see, just tanned at the knees, and especially all those bulging veins, Stuart, and contracted muscles, not an ounce of fat on him. And this was just after 16 days of riding.
Wow.
So imagine what happens at the end. According to a doctor cited by Le Parisien newspaper, this is due to an influx of blood to the body. For a Tour de France rider, the amount of blood pumped can be 8 times that of a regular person and twice that of an amateur sports person. The Tour de France is certainly not for the faint-hearted.
No, it does make you wonder what they'll be like when they get a little bit older. Doesn't it? All right, Dipti, thank you very much. Amazing picture there on France 24.
Now, the economic reform plans of French President Emmanuel Macron have come under the spotlight after the head of the country's military quit. The chief of the General Staff, General Pierre de Villiers, said cuts to the defense budget meant that he didn't feel capable of defending France. Well, Bloomberg's Caroline Conant is in Paris. So, Caroline, first of all, the dispute is over austerity.
Absolutely. It all came about a week ago when the French government announced public spending cuts of 4.5 billion euros, including 850 million euros of budget cuts for the military. Then it turned into a public drama when the chief of the army, the General de Villiers, said this was not tenable, that he was not capable of protecting the French with these budget cuts. And then it turned into an even bigger public drama when President Macron, just before Bastille Day last week, reprimanded the General de Villiers publicly, reminding everyone that he was the ultimate chief of command, that the attitude of General de Villiers was not dignified, and that he didn't need any pressure or commentaries, and this was felt as a humiliation for the military.